Hello and welcome to this week's Torah. In this week's Seder we read about Balak, the king of Moab, and his plans to annihilate the Jewish people because of the fears that they had that the Jewish people would come and conquer his land. Balak had looked around and had seen what had happened to Sichon and to Og, the two powerful and mighty kings, and said that if those two kings got beaten, surely we didn't stand a chance. And so in order to make sure that everything would be okay and that their nation would not get wiped out, he called upon Balaam, a sorcerer, a non-Jewish sorcerer and prophet, to come and to try to curse the Jewish people and to make sure that nothing would happen to his own people. It seems interesting that he would call upon Balaam to do this job. Maybe he should have tried something else first. There's actually a story that is told about a man who walks into a shul. And the man who walks into the shul looks around and he sees a fellow praying fervently, screaming his davening, yelling out loud and shaking his hands and shaking back and forth with complete devotion. And the man who came from a very, very different style of Judaism walked over to this man and said to him, "Sir, I understand that you're davening with great devotion. Can I ask you a question?" He says, "What?" He says, "Did you try asking nicely before you started screaming at God? Maybe God will listen to you without screaming. You don't have to scream and shout and kick and punch your fists. Ask. Ask nicely. See what happens." There was no indication whatsoever in this case with Balak and with Balaam that the Jewish people had planned on invading Moab. And actually the Jewish people were told not to invade Moab. Nevertheless, Balak turns around and says to himself, "This is a dangerous situation. Look at what they did to Sichon and look at what they did to Og." Do you know Sichon and Og actually came out and started the battle with the Jewish people and not vice versa? When the Jewish people traveled through the desert, they didn't touch anybody. When they sent messengers, they said, "Let us just walk through your land. We don't want to do anything. We want to pay for whatever we take. We don't want to hurt anybody. We just want to walk through." No. Fine. The answer was no, they went around. That's what happened with Edom. But Sichon and Og decide that they want to wage war. They want to wage a battle against the Jewish people. And they go out and they start this war and they start this battle against the Jewish people. And then Moab, Balak looks around and says, "Look at what happened to them." What do you mean, look at what happened to them? They started. The Jewish people weren't looking to start wars with anybody. They were looking to travel and to get to the destination Israel, where at that point they would maybe start a war and try to conquer the land of Israel. So why did Balak run ahead? Why didn't Balak think to himself, wait a minute, there is something more important to do. Send a message to Jewish people. Send them maybe a messenger and ask them, "Are you looking for peace? Would you like to leave us alone?" Instead, he ran ahead and he decided, this is not going to happen. Let's once and for all settle with these Jewish people. Let's get this Balaam fellow and let's have Balaam curse them before things get any worse. And we make this mistake often as well. We jump to conclusions. We think we've understood the situation when in reality things could be very, very different than what we think they are. We think somebody has done something wrong to us, but if we were to look at it, it's actually them that have done everything okay, and you've made the mistake. We think sometimes people have swindled us, and then we look again and we realize, one second, they've not taken any money from us at all. Many a time we jump to conclusions, we blame other people, when in reality, before we blame, before we start shouting, before we start making a fuss, we have to ask ourselves the question, did you try nicely? Did you try maybe to do it in a straightforward way? And if you try nicely and try to do it in a straightforward way first, you stand a much better chance than waging war, as Balaam and Balak learned the hard way. Peace is always the best way forward. Have a very good Shabbos.